everybody, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Katie, otherwise known as the Vintage Academic, and if you are new here, I am a junior transfer student at UC Berkeley studying anthropology and archaeology. I make fun vlogs and informational videos about the transfer process, life as a transfer student, and sometimes some vintage clothing to mix things up a bit. If that all sounds good to you, hit the subscribe button to stay tuned for more UC Berkeley and vintage related content. And today, it is day 2 of Vlogmas for me, which means I am bringing you an informational sit-down video where I'm going to talk to you about the reasons why I was rejected to every single school I applied to. Yes, you heard right, folks. I, in fact, applied to the UCs back in 2018 and was then rejected from all of the UCs that I applied to in 2018. So when I first went to community college, I kind of had no inkling about the transfer process. I know I could go to community college and start my college education, but I didn't understand the process through which you actually transfer out and finish your degree. So when I first figured out that what I wanted to do was to transfer, it was probably about only a couple of weeks before the transfer admission guarantee application date, as well as about a month and a half before the actual UC application deadline. This means that I absolutely 100% rushed through getting all the information that I needed to transfer, from required coursework to writing my personal insight questions. It really was a last-minute scramble to figure out what it was I had to do, when I had to do it, and if I could even afford to go to the UCs. I did very minimal research about how to fill out the application effectively, how to write my PIQs effectively, and even which UC I actually wanted to go to and which one would be a good fit for me. This is all to say that I was severely unprepared when it came to the transfer process. I eventually shoddily put together a plan. I headed to the transfer application planner website to fill in all of my coursework and to submit my transfer admission guarantee application, because that's where you do that. I decided to submit my tag to UC Davis, and now if you've watched any of my tag videos, which I will link in the card here and in the description below, you would know that in order to be eligible for the transfer admission guarantee, you must fulfill all of your requirements, which at the minimum is 60 semester units, fulfilling your IGETC, or the Intersegmental General Education transfer curriculum, as well as your major requirements. And I didn't have all of my requirements. As far as I can remember, I had not completed my critical thinking requirement, I was missing a physical science requirement, and I also did not have my major requirements fulfilled for UC Davis. If I'm being completely 100% honest, I knew this when I applied. And the reason why I decided to apply anyways was because I had heard of some special cases of people getting admission for the spring semester rather than the fall, and so I thought if I could make a really strong case for myself that somebody would offer me admission for the spring and then I could use the fall to fulfill those requirements. First of all, that's not how the requirements work, and second of all, this brings us to my essays. The essays that I wrote were bad, to put it nicely. They were all the things that you're not supposed to do when it comes to writing the UC personal insight questions. And if you want to hear about them in sordid detail, go ahead and click on the iCard or check out the description, because I did a whole video where I read out loud my rejected essays and compared them to my accepted essays so you can kind of see what I did wrong and then how I fixed it. But the main point in that video is that every single one of those essays was what I call the resume essay. Now, the resume essay is when you just make a whole list of the things that would theoretically make you qualified for the UCs and upper division coursework, or that would theoretically show that you're a leader, or that would theoretically show your creativity, without doing anything to actually showcase who I am as a person, what kinds of skills I possess, the kinds of things I value in life, and did not contextualize my application whatsoever. So while my GPA was pretty good, the combination of some really bad essays and not fulfilling my requirements was really why I got rejected to the schools that I applied to. I have actually heard that the UCs will not even look at applications that have not fulfilled their requirements for transfer. So if that really truly is the case, then my application was dead on arrival in the first place. Note the very subtle Fall Out Boy reference there. But the main question is, how did I turn it around? Well, let me tell you. First of all, I spent a lot more time researching the UC application. I watched YouTube videos, I went to workshops at community college, I spent an entire year brainstorming what I was going to write for my application, and honestly, not everybody does that. I don't expect everybody to do that, but it was an added advantage of being rejected the first time around. I also finished all of my required coursework. I took that critical thinking class, I took astronomy for my physical science, and then I took that extra class I needed for my major at UC Davis. I also had the added benefit of up having another year to gain experiences, to participate more. I did more volunteering. I did another round of volunteer archaeology. I spent time doing things with clubs on campus, so on and so forth. I raised my GPA even higher. But the number one thing that I think really changed how I approached my application was the fact that I just did research. I guess that's the moral of the story. Regardless of where you're applying, you need to be able to do research to know what you need to do in order to apply and get in. I often get questions from people asking me, I have so-and-so GPA and I want to get into these schools, what are my chances? And I can't answer that question for you because you need to know what is it you're applying for, what major are you getting into? Is it super competitive? What do your essays look like? Are they actually showcasing who you are as a human being and how your experiences in life have shaped you? Have you participated in relevant activities that have something to do with your passions in life? So I spent so much more time looking at what makes somebody a strong applicant. I spent a lot more time getting involved on my campus and participating in extracurricular activities. And then the most important thing was I spent so much more time on my essays. I brainstormed these essays for a really long time, and I watched a lot of YouTube videos, I read a lot of articles, I went to writing workshops to try and figure out exactly what it was that the UCs wanted to know about me. What did they want to hear? How could I tell them that through my writing? I spent a lot of reflection time thinking about what was it about my personality that I wanted to highlight, and this also goes back again to the fact that I had an extra year to think about these kinds of things. I wrote about archaeology for my required question. By the time I got around to writing it, I had had a second experience doing volunteer archaeology, and I had had this like epiphany moment in my life, realizing that that's what I wanted to do, but I wouldn't have had that if I didn't have that extra year. I also started getting into vintage in 2018, but not enough for me to actually write about it for my application in 2018. So I had another year of wearing vintage and getting more involved in the vintage community, and then I was able to write about it for my creativity essay. And not just in the I wear vintage to be creative, but I really got to think about what was it about the vintage community that really spoke to me. By knowing what not to do on my application, I was able to put in so much more time, thought, and effort into the application that ultimately got accepted to every single school that I applied to, which includes UC San Diego, UCLA, UC Santa Barbara, UC Davis, and lastly the school that I go to, UC Berkeley. So there you have it. I feel like this video was a little bit shorter, but that is basically the story of how I got rejected from every school I applied to, how I turned it around and got accepted to every school that I applied to. It really just had to do with the fact that my essays were much more effective and that I had actually completed the required coursework. When it comes to the UCs, I really do think that the essays are the most important part. Yes, you do have to meet your requirements and you have to have a somewhat competitive GPA to get into certain UCs like Berkeley and LA, but when it really comes down to it, it's the UCs want to know who you are, and the essays are the place to show that. I hope you guys found this basically little story time interesting at the very least, perhaps entertaining, and most importantly informative. I didn't really have much of a script for this video. I had a general outline, so I hope everything that I wanted to say I actually did say. I won't know until I edit. It's a bad habit of mine. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'm always happy to talk. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more UC Berkeley and vintage related content, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!